Well, hello there, everyone. Here's show you right here is like for Jaycee Dugard, for real heroes that talk about for hidden treasure. And this right here actually talks about is I spent about 45 minutes to an hour or so doing some editing and then corrections to this illustration painting right here, and I even included two other pages. But you see right here is that the with the two heroes is like for Lisa Campbell and for Lisa Campbell and Allie Jacobs, but for UC Berkeley, like for the police officers, and we wonder to where that yeah, that a lot of times that anybody who walks into a police station, for any particular reason, or if it's going to be anything that's related to the police station or police department, but of some kind, but well, we wonder to where that really that some unexpected things that do wind up happening to where that yeah, that somebody walks into the police department and then they're looking for a job, and anybody that may wonder to where if that's really the case or not, to where they're looking for a job, or that they're trying to get directions to get somewhere or something like that. But let's just say the situation goes by as to where that yeah, one morning or afternoon as to where somebody that walks in and then want to hold an event of some kind. So I know that that was about 6.5 or so years ago since the finding of the missing kidnapping of for Jaycee Dugard, and then as well as for she was found alive, but and as well as for other cases as well for missing children. And I know that the police department right here, that Lisa Campbell and Allie Jacobs, that they more likely that they may not have all the control to the Amber Alerts now, because I know nowadays with Amber Alerts that people that within about maybe 100 miles or so that they get text messages, and you hear it on the radio quite a few times about missing children, abducted kids, or kids safety, or if it's going to be for severe thunderstorm alerts or anything like that. So we weren't to where yeah, what does it usually take to be a real hero? And knowing about, I'm like, yeah, does that mean as to where that hey, there's something going on, you need to take full attention to that, or no, don't worry about it right now, hey, that it's no big deal. So it's kind of like if I can describe as to where like maybe like your mind is kind of going back and forth to where between you see something wrong and then compared to where you were working on before about 5 minutes ago, is to where that something went on to where that you see some warning signs, and you're like warned to where, oh well, actually I don't know what you're talking about, or what's wrong. So sometimes I know with some police officers that whenever they notice a situation to where that somebody were to walk into the police department, and then knowing about for like red flags though, and we're like warned to where anything in particular to where that yeah, red flags, and between the green flags and yellow flags, the green flags basically mean is to where that yeah, you kind of see something wrong, not really, but then on the red flag basically, oh, there's something wrong here. I'm like, if something's not right. And yellow more like means like, well, there's something, something's not right, but you don't know exactly what it is. So what we think about this is that reading through parts of the story, and necessarily thinking about for hidden treasure, and we're like wanting to where that we see something that seems pretty odd, and something that more likely that needs to come to our immediate attention. So we call it something that you're looking for, but then it's not right there as of right now. So just take a few seconds just to kind of look at it, but then at the same time it goes by as to where yeah, that anybody that is like that they identify themselves as somebody, but then after maybe a few hours to maybe a day or two, that they identify themselves as somebody else. So we're like wanting to where that there may be a particular name for what we call that, but then on the other hand, that you're like warrant to where that yeah, any type of business cards or IDs or any some kind, and we're like warrant to where that yeah, that even though if the name it says such and such, and then that they identify themselves as somebody else. So we warrant to where that yeah, that any other source of security, but with these two police officers, worked out to where that they were able to solve a case within the amount of time. And you're like Warren to where that yeah, that why is it that it took more than 7 years just to find this, which called hidden treasure? And I use hidden treasure, by the way, just like an example to where something that could have been there the whole time, but then nobody's seen it. So that's usually what I mean is to where that really that it requires a special kind of reading glasses to where that anybody that may want to where they had a type of reading glasses to where you can actually read that something is not right. So we're like when we're thinking to our minds is that whenever we're looking at papers or anything like that or any other type of photos, and we're like Warren to where that within about maybe 2 or 3 days that I know that some police officers for how that they're trained to be able to identify these manners that don't seem right, that are wrong. And so it goes by as to where that and then they might say to do a background check. And a lot of times I guess that's usually how they say it, is to where to do like what you call a background check, to where that the background check basically means it's like you have right here for parents trained security. So we're like one to where anybody that's going to be a parent, like with me though, that I'm not no parent, but still that knowing about the safety about kids though is that anything that we may see wrong or unusual or something like that, we may think on your hand too that that's none of your concern. Don't worry about it. I don't know what you're thinking. But then on your hand, that it seems like that there's a lock right there, and I use like lock as a an example to where that about this lock to where it's not going to get unlocked until that you get somebody else's attention, like, hey, check them out, hey, they're hiding something, or something's wrong. So in a lot of ways that I keep wondering though, and like anybody that may think that yeah, you think that your artwork's really going to solve anything, huh? Anything that you're doing with your creative work is really going to solve anything. But I'm just what you call talking about the story about these two heroes. And let's just say if the matter would have been as to where that yeah, about one person out of the whole police department, that they went ahead and solved the case. It took quite a bit, of time, over 12, 13 years just to be able to solve a case. And we weren't to where, yeah, that, why is it that it took that long? And just thinking about is to where a lot of those, that information, that evidence that, and you begin to wonder too, that a simple background check, if it's going to be like, we say, a convicted, sex offender or a rapist, we weren't to where anything that's available on the computer nowadays that more likely would be able to provide information about background records, but compared to an ID. So we weren't to where that, yeah, that these two police officers may not have had all the latest technology and all the what you call the latest identified magnifying glass, Jerry, if anything, that more likely just the way that how it was handled, just by the witnesses, to where this is what you've seen. And I'm sure that anybody that it's going to be solving cases, that anything that you see that maybe nobody else has been able to see. One of those will be like maybe about eye contact as well as questions. And I know that sometimes that they say is to where that if you ask somebody questions, and then that they kind of the way they ask them, it's like, and then the way that they're responsive, and sometimes it's to where that yeah, that's whenever that maybe a few red flags that come up, as to where that hey, that you start talking to the kids. But hey, I don't talk to strangers, is more likely what they may say. But then on your hand too, hey, I work for the police department. I'm a police officer. You can talk to a police officer. So I know any kids that more likely that weren't, or if it's going to be maybe a kidnapping case, or maybe an abduction, if it's going to be like an ambulance or anything like that, we're like weren't, or that we may have heard that before, to where don't talk to strangers, and as well as for any warning signs that we may come up with. And one of those could be as to where that yeah, that I went ahead and provide right here are some examples of these paintings right here. One of them that means is to where that yeah that this is not their actual identification. This one right here is their true identification. So they're like one to where that can you really tell apart the difference between these two other than the butterflies look a little bit black and light tamion red or tamion blue or something like that. You got red right here. You have right here is a little bit of green and blue right here on the top. It's like if that was like for like if you want to call it a hair braided in back or something like that. Before that they were before that they were reporting missing, that this is what they look like, but then this is what they look like when they were found. So it seems like that those are two different things. I'm like these right here stories look like two different things, such as what they were wearing and what they look like. Just to be able to tell the difference between that anything about disguise though. So we're like warned to where that. The things that more likely these two police officers that could still see or that they seen that more likely nobody else could see. And one of those could be is like for how well that they are trained and knowing about for being a parent that they ask a few questions and that kind of giving them clues to where that these two young ladies that they became a little bit irresponsive, that they were robotic, or if it's anything about how and then knowing about other than like for happy ending though that talking about is to where that for how well that these police officers that maintain for how they solve the case on their job. So you're like warren to where that yeah that I can maybe go on to where I was also thinking about using a badge as an example to where that badge is like with the badge that yeah that at time for how a police officer would be able to work the case of if it's going to be finding a missing child or solving a case. So the way I think about it, though is like really that an artist like me that tries to put together artwork based on a story and like Warren Tour whenever I read through parts of the book I'm like Warren Tour that yeah that police officers that may not, their education that may only go so far. I'm like, I really don't know too much about really. Did one of these police officers, did they have their degree in what you call in the police academy? Did they have any special training in, like, say, the police academy, or did they have a college degree themselves? Did they have, hours of training of what you call identify any if it's going to be, false identification or if it's, for security purposes, stuff like that. So I'm like Warren to where, yeah, anybody that may think that, a lot of these things that more likely you wonder about, and then anybody that may want to worry about with me though. It's like for my hidden treasure. I'm like, like say, hey, what about a student ID? A student ID or anything about, related to security for, for how fundraisers, how people, how charities are worked. You're like, Warren, to what about charities? Charities to where people who raise money for those who are for missing children, and then for how the police handle their jobs, and warrant toward it, yeah, and any fundraisers, and knowing about for where that that money goes to, and as well as for if it's going to be anything about for security reasons, as to where that yeah that if it's going to be fundraising or somebody that tries to apply for a job, but then something to where that they didn't seem right, such as to where that yeah that this person right here that they say that their name was so and so, but then a few days later they tell you such and such, but I don't know. I'm like, really, if the case is really about, really a misunderstanding. But I know that with these two police officers, that they, like I say, is that, yeah, that anything that could have been a misunderstanding, but then, for how the case was solved. And just think about, for how, the reactions, to the, between, the parents and as well as, for training, for security. So we may warrant where that anybody who's going to be out in the community and like warrant where that we something that may seem quite normal, but then there may be a maybe about one or two red flags that really that you're like warrant to where that that ain't none of your business. You just need to stay out of it. There is no problem, and don't worry about the problem. It'll get taken care of. So really, I'm like, does that take 18 years or 22 years just to solve it? So we weren't aware that anything that we may see wrong or that just think about. It's like, yep, you can always apologize for being wrong, but on your hand too, that we're like weren't aware about these two police officers. That about the job is that making sure everybody's protected and safe, and then on your hand too, that we're like weren't aware. Job is that really that the special equipment, just for how that they were trained, the years of education, that type of stuff. So we're like warrant and also on your hand too that for professional work of professional campus police is that we're like warrant university campus Berkeley police that we warrant where that yeah, something that may not have been updated at a certain time. So we may wonder about that question about that, but then on your hand that we're like also warrant where that anything that does not seem real. Does that it does not seem that pleasant. It's like something that seems real odd. Something you find a red flag somewhere, but then you don't know where it's coming from. You cannot identify where the red flag's coming from. You don't know what's wrong, but you kind of see what's wrong until about 2 days later, and then you find out that this child right here, yep, that they've been missing for 18 years, or they were going to this school, but they whether they were provided false identification or something like that. So we're like warned to where that there's a point of time to where that yeah, that anything about anybody that may say that, yeah, well, if you blow the whistle, then more likely the chances are that somebody that may be hiding something, or but then on your hand to where that really that you gotta go by the truth as well. But you see right here, as you have right here, as an example I point out right here, are like these two different names. Name, it's like a name could be hidden like a from a different identity or something like that. But then on your hand, that we weren't, where that some kids that they may decide as to where that they want to they don't feel comfortable saying their true identity out loud, so they're going to go ahead and write it down, or they're going to go ahead and do like what you call sign. They're going to sign to the person. So different ways of how police officers can use other languages. And it sounds like to me that yeah, that from reading from the book too, that it wasn't just meeting these people, meeting the girls in person, to where a few things that they did find wrong, but just the question went by as to where that how just to be able to handle this, is to where that the things that they seen that maybe not everybody else seen until later on. So they basically says to where how they handle it. Well, they basically yep, called made a phone call to the officer, the parole officer, and then told them the details. And so it's like, think about it, to where that we may think that yeah, that the police officer should not get that nosy. The police officer, the way they handle their job, should not be getting into somebody else's business or something like that, but just being concerned about it. But then on your hand, at the same time, it's like, well, that red flag that more likely got somebody else's attention. So the way I think about it, though, is like, really, that if this was my homework right here, and just thinking about it, as to where that yeah, that are you looking for anything particular, such as lost or stolen goods, or thinking that somebody's going to be missing, or they ran away from home or something like that. So the basic requirements about being a police officer, and I'm sure that they say that yeah, that have being a police officer, that making sure people are protected. But then on your hand, that you're like warrant to where that something about the job to where that allowed these two police officers to be say the real heroes, to solve the case of the real heroes, to where that they were actually able to see and handle the situation for what they seen. And I wonder to where let's just say if it was just one person, I think it was Lisa Campbell who who was the first one that according to what I read from the book, as to where she's seen something wrong first. before she asked, her other, I guess you say the other officer, Campbell, and I think Jacobs, Allie Jacobs, and Lisa Campbell, that they asked her that be what you call it, like be your partner, to be in that room with her, which I'm sure anybody likely wanted to, if it was just one of these officers that really solved the case. So we're like wanting to where if it's just going to be one person or maybe a group of 4 or 5, and we're like wanting to where that really, I'm like, is it really surprising about that, yeah, you went to the meeting. You went to the meeting, but then you went to the meeting just to talk about maybe changes going on in the community, but then you don't expect to find out that somebody there, was kidnapped, or that they snuck in, through an invalid security system. So it's really kind of amazing to just think about as to where cases are solved, just by the work that we were doing. But just on here, hint to learn for professionals is that I keep thinking, though, that a lot of my work, that I keep thinking that, yeah, is it useful at all? Anybody that more likely wanted to, where is it going to solve anything? But on your hand, that I'm like, is it going to solve anything? Well, really, it could maybe improve, the police department, Antioch, that's all the way out there in California, between, from all over the country, that knowing about all the different police departments all over the country. We weren't to where if the situation could have been is to where if it was all the way up there in New York City or maybe parts of Florida, you're like weren't to where a source of information that from back in 1989 to 1991, that we're like weren't to where whose job is it, huh? Just to make sure that anything that we find wrong, it was this town that was located 700 miles away. That police officer can't do much, but but knowing about these real heroes, though, is for like what you call this hidden treasure, is that you're like warrant to where maybe a problem can be solved if we would actually work the math and doing actually the research, and you're like warrant to where that really the job may be considered what you call it. It may not be what you call it the main matter at the time, but then more likely that if it's the chances are that you could be solving a case, and more likely anybody that may say that, yeah, well, I wasn't on duty at the time. I this actually was just this was an activity. This was a meeting. I don't know if I want to take a few steps further just because I find something wrong, after the meeting. So you're like Warren, to where what are the smartest ways of how to take a few steps forward? If you find something wrong, then are you just going to pause what you're doing and then take whatever actions that you think is necessary, what's right, or are you just going to say, I'm just going to ignore it? So we warn to where that, yeah, try not to ignore situations like that if you find something wrong. But on the other hand, too, like knowing about for honor for anybody who's willing to solve a case, and it's like for honor, for the Jaycee Dugard, real heroes. UC Berkeley, talk about for the hidden treasure. Thanks for watching.